Welcome to GenCon Day 1. This is the drive-in video, so I'm going to go ahead and just go through sort of the plans for today, my goals for the day, etc. On the schedule today is 2 Heroscape events. The first one is Heat 1 of the main event, trying to get entry into Day 2. I already have entry into Day 2, so we're just playing this for practice. We don't have to win it, but we definitely want the practice. We'd like to get some, experience using our army. Primary goal for that event is just to get familiarity and be happy with the way that we've played our army, or at least have a good knowledge of how we're going to play our army in Day 2, having played against at least 3 of the people, hopefully 4, that are going to be in that field. So let's take a look at the 2 armies that I think are viable Maladrix builds. First up here, so this is going to be the core of both of them. So we're going to have Maladrix, along with her Festering Honor Guard, and the Oathbound. So the Oathbound Legionnaires and the Oathbound Phalanx. Basically, I just think that Oathbound is also just a really good piece, and it happens to fit with Maladrix quite well in the sense that you generally want to open Maladrix, and the Oathbound are pretty happy as a closing unit. They also just work really well together with the point totals in that there's really 2 options to fill this out. The first one, and I think the most obvious one to fill it, is with Exiles. There's a standalone piece that's just quite good and happens to fill the points that are left. The problem ends up being this: you're 1 figure over. So you have to sit a figure. I think most of the time you're going to end up sitting a Festering Honor Guard. Occasionally, I could see an argument for sitting an Exile, but being 1 figure over just isn't the best. But if we back out of the Exiles, the other option that we've got here is the Revenant Acolytes. So you can do Acolytes, and then your only filler option at that point is Kita. Once again, though, you are 1 figure over, so you're going to end up sitting either an Acolyte or Kita, depending on the map or the matchup, if there's a Wanek glyph or whatnot. Bullet build, definitely viable, definitely could be seen on in the top 32. Currently, I am leaning towards the Exiles version of this build. So I expect that this is the version that I'm going to go with for the event. I've done some practicing with both versions of it. I just think Maladrix is amazing in this meta, and I want Maladrix. And once I pick Maladrix, I think this is the best way to fill it out personally. But we'll see, we'll see how it goes. That's just my prediction with it. My initial impression of this matchup is that it's quite favorable to me. My whole army is good into Tanukis, and Shori isn't a particularly good unit. The main sub-matchup here that I need to look to avoid is going to be Wraith Riders versus Exiles, as that's a really easy way to just lose 3 Exiles in a single turn for no good reason. In terms of the map, we have Wanek on the left and Loden on the right, so my broad plan is to play to the left side of the map and contest Wanek there, as it's far more relevant to my army. Loden does help a few of my opponent's figures, but it's just not that big of a jump, and me avoiding the auto wound is worth way more. I chose to sit a Festering Honor Guard in this matchup, which I still think is easily correct. I end up opening pure Maladrix here with the X on Exiles. My goal is to trade for at least 1 to 2 of the Wraith Riders before activating the Exiles. And then we see that our opponent went with a pure Tanuki opening, and we get lucky and lose this initiative. Tanuki's open by rolling towards the Wanek side of the map, and Maladrix and the FHG develop in the same direction. My goal here is for Maladrix to be fairly central on that side to respond to wherever Tanukis end up going. Tanukis then move up and get the first strike, but thankfully miss both attacks on FHG. Back over to me, there's some Tanukis that FHG can get height on, so I take both of those spots, and then also end up attacking up at the Tanuki on max height, mostly because the upside of killing it is just really good. It would mean that I don't have to take an LEA on Maladrix to get past it, and then face less heighted attacks from Tanukis on the following turn. I end up getting 1 Tanuki from height, and Mal takes an LEA to walk past the middle Tanuki to engage 2 other Tanukis on even ground, and she ends up getting both. Watching this back now, though, I don't actually see the LEA get rolled, so I'm not sure if we missed it in-game, or if the roll was off-camera and just missed. But if I did miss it in-game, all I can do is offer a belated and albeit useless apology to my opponent. Sorry if we missed it. I need to pay more attention. Tanukis then move up again and take 2 shots at FHG, killing 1. I take Wanek and ship 1 FHG into my opponent's start zone to attack a sleeping Wraith Rider. Again here, just trying to dodge the worst sub-matchup later in the game, and I do manage to put a wound on him. Maladrix stays where she is and attacks a single Tanuki. My thought process here was that if I get that kill and then get the initiative switch, Mal can move into the start zone to engage 3 Tanukis plus Shori on my order marker 1. I do end up getting this one Tanuki kill here, and a different Wraith Rider ends up taking the Wannick wound. Moving into round 2 now, I still have a full health Mal plus 3 FHGs, so I just roll with order markers on Mal with the X on Exiles again. My guess is that this should be a low frequency order marker 3 on Exiles in theory, but in practice I'm probably just doing 1, 2, 3 on Mal at 100% frequency. My opponent ends up putting 3 order markers on Tanuki and 1 on Shori again. I win initiative and do get the switch that I was playing for. I take the FHG off of Wannick, developing towards my opponent's start zone, while the other FHG both happen to get lucky and get kills, one on the wounded Wraith Rider and one on the Tanuki on Rock Height. Mal then moves into that really good spot in my opponent's start zone and gets 1 Tanuki kill off 2 attacks. Over to my opponent, who has 1 on Tanukis. One ends up taking Lava Height and another engages an FHG. Both kill the FHG, leaving me with just 1, but still a full life Mal. I bring my last FHG back up to level 2 and attack a Tanuki, but miss it. Mal then pivots to engage a Tanuki and a Wraith Rider along with Shori. I do get both the Tanuki and the Wraith Rider, and Mal hits the infestation roll on Shori successfully. At this point, with 2 dead Wraith Riders and the last one wounded, we've avoided the worst of the Wraith Rider versus the Exile sub-matchup that we were hoping to dodge, so we're quite happy about that trade. Back over to Tanuki, there's now 4 of them left. They missed the 1 attack on the Festering Honor Guard and put 1 wound on Maladrix. The last FHG takes Lava Height on a Tanuki and does get the kill, while I put Maladrix in a questionable spot that ends up being ruled legal by a judge. One of my goals for the day was to test the boundaries here and see what they'd rule as legal versus illegal Maladrix spots, since we were told they were going to be quite lenient. But watching this back, I think the judge ruling was just wrong, and this should have been illegal. Based on the rulings I got for the rest of the weekend, I think this spot was illegal and would have been ruled that way once they got a little bit more consistent with it. And it definitely is illegal with the clarification that we got at the end of the weekend. This time, the LEA for Maladrix definitely does get rolled, and she takes it, doing a 2nd wound to her. The last 2 Tanukis take out the last FHG and do 2 more wounds to Mal, who also takes the lava wound and is now down to 1 life. And I then miss my first shot at chest-bursting Shori. Going into round 3, I think Maladrix should always have exactly 1 order marker here, usually the X, but the 1 at some low frequency like 25% or maybe less. I put the other 3 order markers on Exiles, but I'm not sure that I like this in hindsight. There's a really good argument to have a single order marker on Oathbound here, with either the 1 on Mal or the 3 on Oathbound, and the other 2 order markers on Exiles. The highest frequency version of this is probably the X on Mal, the 1, 2 on Exiles, and the 3 on Oathbound. That's also probably the most hedging version of my order markers here, and there's a solid argument for me to do the hedge, given that I'm substantially up in the game state. In-game, though, I end up putting all 3 order markers on the Exiles with the X on Mal, and get fairly lucky that I win initiative. But I think this was too big of a risk. 2 order markers would have been enough for them to get their powder off and then still get to Wannick after that, and 3 is just an unnecessary risk. Exiles use their powder but miss all 4 attacks into the Tanukis, who do have the order marker 1 and return fire from height. This decision for my opponent is a bit of a tricky one, because the ranged shots allow me to get stealthy rolls, but all adjacent shots will then give me height on my following order marker. But I end up missing both stealthies, so it doesn't matter, and I lose 2 Exiles. Exiles then run up and engage both Tanukis, killing 1 of them, which is enough to ensure that I don't lose my order marker 3 at least. Tanuki do have the order marker 2 and kill 1 Exile. I pivot my last Exile, but miss the attack up into that last Tanuki. Shori has the order marker 3 and finishes off Maladrix. Shori ends up dying to lava here, and I get to bring an FHG back where Shori was. At this point, there's no argument for order markers anywhere but on Oathbound. I do win initiative and pop 3 Legionnaires off the Phalanx, and then ship the whole package towards that Tanuki. I'm not sure if that's more efficient here than just leaving them all on the Phalanx, though, necessarily. but I do end up getting the Tanuki with the 4x 3v5s, which ends up burning my opponent's Order Marker 1 and Order Marker 2. I then ship a Legionnaire off to Wannick and claim height with the Phalanx, who has no reason to go anywhere other than height, and I put the other 2 Legionnaires back on the Phalanx, because I don't want that last Wraith Rider to be able to chain grab one of them and get an even ground 3v3 on it. The Wraith Rider has the Order Marker 3, but can't get close enough to Wannick, and I win the game with the Wannick roll. Overall, I'm happy with the order I sequenced my army in this game, but there was definitely one round in there where I really don't like my order marker distribution, so that's something to note and work on. Moving on to round 2, we're facing a Maladrix Semi-Mirror with Q11 and 1x Acolytes. In terms of sub-matchups that I like and dislike here, I want to avoid Exiles into Q11, ideally, and want to get either Maladrix or Oathbound into Q11. Maladrix has the ability to infest him, which is great for a high defense hero. Oathbound might be the best individual sub-matchup into Q11, though, as I can leave all Legionnaires on the Phalanx and limit Q11 to just 1 attack per turn, killing a maximum of 1 Legionnaire. But I can't really afford to open Oathbound and have my opponent open Maladrix, because that sub-matchup is fairly bad. So I think I need to just open Maladrix here and either get a good matchup into Q11 or an even matchup into my opponent's Maladrix. By the way, that yellow order marker is representing an FHG for my opponent. He was missing 1, and so we used that order marker to represent the 5th FHG for his army to start. I decided to sit a Festering Honor Guard here, which I think is the only option. Oathbound is so good late game into Q11 that I think I need to have all 4 Legionnaires for that sub matchup in case it comes down to it. I get lucky and lose the opening initiative, and we see Acolytes move up, presumably to give some anchor points where Maladrix can join them later. My opponent opens with 1 order marker on Acolytes and then the 2 and 3 on Q11, which I think is a mistake. I think that Q11 looks like an okay matchup into Maladrix in some sense on paper, but with the initiative glyph on the board, I think it's actually pretty bad in practice. Q11 can't really contest that glyph, and I can play around initiative, waiting to engage Q11 until Order Marker 3 if I lose in it, and then getting the initiative switch at a high frequency. And Q11 should be pretty afraid to attack FHG in the opening as well, because getting infested is so bad, so there's a little bit less value out of the special attack there. There's also the issue that if I win the exchange with Maladrix versus Q11 and then trade remotely evenly with the ensuing Maladrix v Maladrix matchup, I've just essentially won the game. And my Maladrix should have the terrain advantage in that if it comes to it, given that I'll already be on height over his Maladrix. I then develop Maladrix and the FHG. Q11 moves up, but doesn't have any shots yet. I get another pretty lenient judge ruling here with fitting Maladrix on this heighted spot and develop the Festering Honor Guard to where they have either jungle, height, or will be hidden from Q11's line of sight, prepping for Q11 to be using his special attack on my opponent's Order Marker 3. Q11 then moves to a pretty vulnerable position that I don't quite understand. I'll be able to get even ground on him here with Maladrix and height with a Festering Honor Guard. But Q11 kills 1 FHG, which is fine with me, as now I'll be able to roll to infest him. But it doesn't end up getting there. I engage Q11 with 1 Festering Honor Guard while taking Dagmar, and then move Maladrix in to fight Q11, and she just kills him across her 2 attacks, which puts me in a pretty amazing position going into round 2. With Maladrix unwounded, 3 Festering Honor Guard, and Dagmar, we're definitely putting all order markers on Maladrix here. I do win the round 2 initiative and move up FHG without any attacks. The one on the far side can't be engaged yet on my opponent's next order marker, while the one in the middle can be engaged but will have height. And the last one prevents my opponent from getting height on where my Maladrix will go. And then she comes into that spot, engaging 2 FHG and killing one of them, the one that was represented by the order marker. My goal here, though, is to keep the battle from happening away from where the Acolytes are, so that my opponent's Maladrix doesn't get that boost when the inevitable Mal v Mal battle happens. The opposing Festering Honor Guard now come in and do get the 1 FHG versus FHG kill, while Maledrix moves up next to an Acolyte. I try to bond with Maledrix before the Festering Honor Guard, a reoccurring trend of mine this tournament, and my opponent helpfully points out the mistake. I retreat the 1 FHG to where it can't get attacked and take 1 attack down, killing an FHG, and then Mal pivots to engage 2 Festering Honor Guard and kills 1 of them. The unengaged FHG moves towards my start zone, while the engaged one attacks my Maledrix. I take Dagmar and have a heighted attack on an FHG, which I miss, and then my Mal pivots a bit and kills that last FHG that she's engaged with. Unfortunately, the camera fell down a level on my tripod here, and I didn't notice it for a bit, so the view of the map is only partial for the next bit of the game. It does get fixed later on. My apologies, I'm new at this and did not notice this for a bit. Thankfully, the opposing Maledrix is kind enough to come into camera view and runs into my start zone to engage the Bug Ball. She does 2 wounds and burns 1 Legionnaire, and Bug Ball also gets infested here. Order markers here get a bit interesting because my Maledrix is still at full health, but on the far side of the map away from where the action is. Exiles are in a prime spot right now to take height and use a powder to blast Maledrix. I also have the initiative glyph though, which lets me put the order marker 1 on Bug Ball here, where I otherwise couldn't afford to take that risk. Dagmar is letting me sequence my pieces a little bit more efficiently, with the order marker 1 on Bug Ball and then the 2 and 3 on Exiles. I had put the X on Oathbound to threaten that as my order marker 2. I do win initiative, and Bug Ball takes height and the Oathbound attack Mal, doing 2 wounds to her. I did the best I could here with Oathbound to position them such that Mal would have to take as many LEAs as possible to reach any Exiles. And I now realize that I knocked the camera over and fix it. Yay. Maledrix stays where she is and kills 1 Legionnaire. Exiled now take height, use a powder, and end up doing 3 more wounds to Maledrix. With just 1 life left, Mal can't afford to take the LEAs, so she stays and kills the Phalanx, bringing an FHG back into that spot, and then also kills the Legionnaire. I bring my Exiles in for the regular attacks, getting 1 heighted shot on Mal plus 1 even ground attack, 1 attack up into that new FHG, and 1 heighted shot on an Acolyte. I end up getting all of the kills, and while I do get that Acolyte, I think attacking the Acolyte is a mistake. I'm exposing an Exile here to an Acolyte order marker 3 for no good reason, when killing Maledrix is more important anyways. And I think this is a little bit greedy here from my perspective, and just an unnecessary risk given how far up I am. Order marker 3 is on the Acolytes, who move forward a bit and kill that 1 Exile, but the game is basically over at this point, so I'll just go ahead and speed up through the end of the game as there's not a ton of value in discussing these remaining decisions. I was happy with how I sequenced my pieces in this game too, and I'm really starting to like the pure Maledrix opening with my army. It's just so powerful, especially if Dagmar is on the map and it's able to manage the initiative switch from round 1 into round 2, and it's just so well designed to play for that anyways. Moving on to round 3, we are facing another Maledrix semi-mirror, this time with Halusha plus Anshu and Kita as the other piece. Halusha is definitely a legit piece, and one I frankly expected to see more representation from in this meta than we did see over the weekend. Maledrix ended up just kind of outclassing Halusha a bit in this format, but I think that Halusha is still better than what the final results from the event overall showed. I sat on FHG again this game, which I think is the only option here. I go with a different opening this time, putting the 1 and X on Maledrix with the 2 and 3 on Exiles. My goal was for Maledrix and the Festering Honor Guard to claim that triangle right outside of my start zone, and then have Exiles go in sniping, trying to draw my opponent into me, so that my Maledrix would have height on either his Maledrix or his Halusha, whichever piece came in first. And we see 2 order markers each on Halusha and Maladrix. We get lucky once again and lose the opening initiative. His order marker 1 is on Halusha, who moves up and bonds with Onshu. I move FHGs and Mal up, taking that triangle that I noted earlier outside my start zone, and putting 1 FHG on a level 1 next to my exile in the north. I kind of had a feeling that my opponent had order marker 2 on Halusha here, and so this serves 2 purposes. The first is it blocks Halusha from hitting that exile, where I have my order markers 2 and 3. And the second is that it gives Halusha a target as bait to, in my opinion, mistakenly come in and attack. With me knowing that there aren't 2 more order markers on Halusha, I think this would be a pretty major mistake for Halusha to come in here, because I can just max exploit it with exiles without any fear of any of them dying, knowing that the 3 wouldn't be on Halusha. I predict correctly, and order marker 2 is in fact on Halusha. We see Onshu attacking Maladrix, missing those attacks, and then Halusha takes the bait that I set out. Even harder than I guessed, actually, moving to level 1 and attacking even ground on the Festering Honor Guard. To be honest, I'm not sure why Halusha went there instead of taking the Hided attack next to the bush. That just seems worse. But I'm quite happy to see Halusha on level 1 here with no more order markers on it for the rest of the round. My order marker 2 is on exiles, and I have all options on the table here. My goal between order markers 2 and 3 is to maximize offense into Halusha across those 2 order markers, while ending with 1 exile on Dagmar at the end of order marker 3. To that end, I decided to use Powder on this turn, and manage a whopping 6 wounds on Halusha here, between 2 Hided attacks of 4v3 and 1 even ground 3v3. His Maladrix then moves up on order marker 3. We actually realized that he was missing a Festering Honor Guard here, so we got a proxy figure out and used it as the 5th FHG for now, and we end up finding the actual FHG later and swapping out those minis then. My order marker 3 is on exiles. I grab Dagmar with the 1, and the other 3 move up and take some melee attacks. I end up leaving Halusha alone here, because 1 life really isn't enough for it to be a threat moving into future rounds, and so I think I'm better off attacking other targets here, and I end up killing 1 FHG on this turn. Going into round 2, I have Dagmar, so I'm always putting the order marker 1 on exiles here. So the real question is about the other order markers. I took a bit of a risk here and put the 2 on exiles as well, with the 3 and the X on Maladrix. My thinking was that if I win initiative, I can retreat the exiles out of range of getting engaged, use Powder, and then engage with them in melee on order marker 2 to try and get max value out of exiles. Ideally, killing most of the FHGs to set up a spot where I have Maladrix plus my FHGs on height versus just Maladrix on low ground. My opponent puts 2 order markers each on Halusha and Maladrix, which I think is a pretty clear mistake. I think he should have a 3-1 distribution between Maladrix and Halusha pretty much always here. 2-2 each tells me with a certainty that there is an order marker on Halusha, almost certainly the 1. And with me having Dagmar, that's a pretty massive piece of information to give me. In my opinion, if you want to have the 1 on Halusha, you should have the X on Maladrix to hide where the 1 actually is here, so that I might skip attacking Halusha on my order marker 1 when I win initiative. I do win initiative, and knowing that the 1 is almost certainly on Halusha, I retreat my exiles to hit Halusha with Powder. I position the 3 exiles that can reach Halusha all on height, and send the other 1 to hit a Festering Honor Guard from height. I'm not sure if that's the optimal choice for the 4th one here. There's an argument that I should retreat him instead, but unfortunately, I then proceed to miss all 3 4v3s on Halusha. And this is a good spot to break out the good old damage calculator again. So each 4v3 on Halusha is a 65.5% chance to do the 1 wound needed to kill him, which means that Halusha needs to hit a 34.5%er 3 times in a row, which is about 4% to survive all 3 attacks. Halusha manages to hit the 4%er though, and survives, while I kill the Festering Honor Guard. Halusha, unsurprisingly, has the order marker 1, Onshu uses the special attack to hit exiles, but thankfully misses both, and Halusha comes in to fight Maladrix, but I block it. My 2 is on the exiles, and I still have all 4 of them. My goal here is to trade for FHG as best as possible, knowing that I'm likely to lose my exiles to the possible initiative switch from his Maledrix anyways. So I come in and engage a bunch of Festering Honor Guard here and end up killing Halusha and 1 FHG this turn. His Order Marker 2 is on Maledrix, as expected, and FHG come in, but miss both attacks they take into exiles. Maledrix now doesn't have anywhere good to move up to, so she just stays where she is and kills that 1 exile. My Order Marker 3 is on Maledrix, but I also don't have anywhere good to move up to, so I stay in place to mitigate the possible initiative switch that his Maledrix might get here. Back over, his Order Marker 3 is on Mal, and Festering Honor Guard take Dagmar and kill 1 exile, while Maledrix moves over to kill that other exile. I actually think him taking Dagmar here is a mistake, though. With me not moving forward, the initiative switch just isn't very valuable here, as the attacks on his Order Marker 1, if he wins it, aren't very good. It's a spot where I definitely want to lose initiative going into round 3, and so I'm quite happy to see my opponent take Dagmar here. I put 1, 2, and 3 all on Maledrix here with the X on Bugball, having already lost a few exiles and likely to lose another when my opponent wins initiative. But I'm up on points and can force Mal to come into my position where I have height for the Mal v Mal exchange, so I just load up order markers on her and wait for that to happen. We do lose initiative, and we see 2 FHGs stay back while Mal moves up to height. I send in 1 FHG to take the heighted attack on my opponent's FHG, which I miss, and develop my other FHG up and move my Maledrix to max height as well. His Festering Honor Guard kill 1 exile, and Maledrix comes into my start zone and attacks my Oathbound, doing some damage and infesting the Bug Ball, but giving up height in the process. I take heighted shots with my FHG into his FHG, and Maledrix, and an even ground attack into an FHG, killing both FHG, and then my Maledrix comes in and takes 2x 5v5 from height into his Maledrix, doing 2 wounds and infesting his Mal. We had a long discussion in-game here, where my opponent thought that I hadn't lost an FHG yet this game, and therefore couldn't roll for infest here. I eventually remembered that his Halusha had killed one of my FHG in the opening in round 1, but he still requested that I check the footage later to confirm that. So here it is. My opponent actually has his Order Marker 3 on Anshu, not Maledrix here, which feels especially inefficient given that his Maledrix came off height on the previous Order Marker. If you know that you have this Order Marker 3 on Anshu here, Maledrix should just stay up on that great Maledrix perch that she was on at the end of round 1. But Anshu does no damage, and it's back over to me. My FHG take Dagmar and develops towards Anshu, and then my Maledrix puts another 3 wounds on his Maledrix. He misses the chest burst roll on my Bug Ball, but I happen to hit it on his Maledrix, killing her and effectively ending the game. And welcome to round 4. Yet another semi-Maledrix mirror. Maledrix with Tanuki is definitely a powerful army in this meta. Adding Decker with Tanukis is interesting, but I think it's ultimately inferior to just having 1x more Tanukis. There's not really any awful sub-matchups for me in this one, with the possible exception of Maledrix plus the FHGs into Oathbound, but I'm never opening pure Oathbound anyways, so that one doesn't matter too much in terms of game planning. I sit a FHG this game, which I think is right, but there is some argument for sitting a Legionnaire instead this time. I don't know. It's close, but I think FHG is still better. I go with 1x on Maledrix, 2-3 on Exiles, which, along with pure Maledrix, are the 2 openings that I'm liking best at this point for my army, and our opponent opens pure Tanuki. We continue our excellent initiative luck and lose opening initiative again, and Tanukis go ahead and develop up. We then move Maledrix and the FHGs up a bit. It's not a great map for Mal, so she doesn't have a ton of options for where she can go. While with the FHGs, I super slow roll them to the safest spots, despite not being a ton of development. Really trying to avoid losing 2 of them to heighted Tanuki attacks on the next order marker though, especially on a map with Dagmar, when I lost opening initiative and can just play for the switch into round 2 instead of fast rolling my army now. Back over to Tanuki for Order Marker 2, who come in and take attacks on Maledrix, but do no wounds. I have Order Marker 2 on the Exiles, and take a bit of a weird turn here, developing near the bush towards Dagmar, while electing not to use a powder. If I remember right, I was thinking that the attacks I had here were not very good, and that I was better waiting until Order Marker 3 to use the powder. Importantly, though, I have 2 different Exiles here that can both reach Dagmar in one move. Back over to Tanuki, who kill 1 Exile and take Wannick. Back to me. I use Exiles to take the Initiative Glyph, plus get a ton of good shots on Tanukis here. I get a little lucky here and kill 2 Tanukis. I then get a lot lucky, and my opponent rolls a 1 on Wannick. Oof. That results in half the Tanukis now being dead, which is going to make my opponent's order markers much harder for the rest of the game. I have Dagmar, so I can put order marker 1 on Exiles pretty freely, so the real question is about my other 2 order markers. I also definitely want order marker 3 on Maledrix, so the main question is about my 2. I think it should go on Exiles at a high frequency here, and on Maledrix at a low frequency, as I'm likely to have most of my Exiles around for my Order Marker 2 most of the time. I actually went with 3 Order Markers on Exiles here, and 1 on Mal, with Mal having the 3. A bit greedy looking at face value, but I don't hate it given the game state. I do think that a 2-2 split, though, might be slightly better in hindsight. I do win initiative, and see my opponent has 2 Order Markers on Maledrix, 1 on Tanukis, and 1 on Decker. My assumption is that it's 1 on Tanuki with 2-3 on Maledrix and the X on Decker, so I need to target Tanukis here. I kill 1 Tanuki first, miss the second attack, and then end up taking a heighted attack on an FHG instead of up into its Tanuki with that final attack. It looked like I spent about 1 minute thinking through that spot in-game, which makes sense because it feels like a really close spot to me. The 4v3 is just a way better attack than the 3v5, but the value of killing the Tanuki is so much higher. I don't know what's better here, to be honest. I do get the FHG, though, so there's that. Order Marker 1 is on the Tanukis, as expected, and I get quite lucky that neither attack goes through, and we then see Decker move up via Tanuki movement bonding. My 2 is on Exiles, and I end up attacking the Tanuki and Decker, more out of a lack of other options than anything else. I've already used my powder for this round, and I can't really get to Maledrix here. I do get both Tanuki, though, and put 1 wound on Decker. My opponent's 2 is on Maledrix. There was a question about the map here, whether those tiles outside the start zone were ice or wellspring water. It looks like we went with ice, and the Festering Honor Guard move up but miss both Exile attacks, while Mal develops south towards Wannick. My 3 is Mal, and I have an FHG take Dagmar and engage the FHG with another FHG to prevent it from being able to get to mine on Dagmar without taking an LEA. I really want the first strike next round in the ensuing Mal v Mal clash. I get the 1 FHG versus FHG kill, and Mal moves up a bit, still out of range of where his Mal can strike on the next order marker, though. Back to my opponent's 3. The Festering Honor Guard come in and kill 1 Festering Honor Guard of mine plus 1 Exile, and his Maledrix takes Wannick. I end up assigning that Wannick wound to the last Exile, as I'm never really going to put another order marker there with just 1 Exile left on the board, and that Exile isn't blocking anything important right now either. Going into round 3, I have Dagmar again, and a full life Maledrix and 3 FHG still, so I put 3 order markers on Mal and 1 on Bugball. I do win initiative, and see 3 order markers on my opponent's Maledrix as well. That Maledrix is a ways away though, so I instead focus on killing the Festering Honor Guard that are near me with my Festering Honor Guard, but I miss all of those attacks. My Maledrix then moves up and kills 1 FHG. Over to my opponent's 1 on Mal, and the FHG hiding behind that ruin retakes height and actually puts 2 wounds on my Maledrix off the 3v5, and his Maledrix just takes the height next to Wannick. Back to my OM2, I actually had it on Oathbound here, not Maledrix, which I actually don't remember doing. I suspect that I thought I'd have an opportunity to develop it for free here if I had killed all those FHGs on my order marker 1, and that would then allow me to contest Wannick better on the following round, which is definitely true, but given that I didn't get the FHGs and they currently have height on my Mal, that decision is looking pretty silly right about now. Thankfully, I block the FHG attacks and don't get punished for this risk, and his Mal retakes Wannick. I rotate my Mal to where she can get height on his Mal on the following turn, and kill an FHG, and after doing so, realize I did the bonding in the wrong order. Reoccurring theme with me and Maledrix this whole event, unfortunately. His Maledrix comes in, I have height, and the Mal v Mal battle begins. My Mal takes 2 more wounds here off the 4v6s, and he misses the Infest roll. Going into round 4 now, and a pretty major initiative coming up with neither of us on Dagmar this time. I think that at Equilibrium, this spot for me is either going to be 3 order markers on Mal and 1 on Bugball, with the 3 usually on Bugball, mostly to contest Wannick, or a 2-2 split between them, with the 2 on Bugball at a low frequency. I'm not actually sure what's going to be better here at Equilibrium. I can see a lot of merit to both distributions. This time in-game, I go with the 3-1 split, though. I get lucky and win the initiative, and I'm able to use my FHG to pin down Maledrix to where she won't be able to get away from low ground for the exchange. I don't do any wounds here, but I do hit the Infest roll. Over to his Maledrix now, who kills my Maledrix. My Festering Honor Guard pick up the slack for my Maledrix and do 4 wounds here to his Maledrix, and a couple more to Decker. I was attacking Decker here because he actually has 2 order markers on Decker here, so I know the 3 is going to be coming up on Decker, as it's almost certainly 1-2 Mal 3x Decker. His Mal moves up, but doesn't actually kill any of the FHG. My 3 is on Bugball, and I go ahead and pop 1 Legionnaire off, which ends up taking height on Maledrix, but not actually wounding her. I totally missed the fact in-game, though, that I'm setting up a Decker special attack line here, though it would actually go through his own Maledrix, but I still probably shouldn't be presenting it. His 3 is on Decker, and he forgoes the special attack because it would hit his own Maledrix, and ends up moving up and missing the FHG attack. I missed the Chestburst roll on Maledrix, and then going into the next round. I end up putting 2 order markers each on FHG and Oathbound. I did the 1x on FHG and 2-3 on Oathbound here, which feels like the dominant distribution for this game state, as I can't lose all of the FHG on my order marker 1, and if initiative, I definitely want to have that FHG order marker. I end up losing initiative, however, but I get lucky that his Maledrix continues rolling like absolute crap, and all my FHG live. My 1 is on FHG, who ascend to height and hit Maledrix and Decker, but don't kill either. His 2 is on Maledrix, who kills the FHG but misses the Legionnaire. Back to me, my 2 is on Oathbound, and I leave all 3 Legionnaires on the Phalanx. This is an interesting decision point, because popping off 1 Legionnaire here gives me a better attack on Maledrix. I exchange a 3v5 for 4v5, but it also lines me up a little for Decker, and though it doesn't look like Decker can get the special attack off on this coming turn though, watching it back now, this seems like a mistake, as I should have popped the 1 off to get height on Mal just because there was no line for this specific order marker, and then I could have just gone back on the Phalanx for my OM3. But the mistake doesn't end up hurting me here, as the Phalanx gets Mal anyways, and I return an FHG to the map. I end up popping that last Legionnaire back onto the Phalanx. Decker stays where he is, and fails to kill the FHG again. I pop 1 Legionnaire off to go and take Wannick, and move the Phalanx towards Decker. I'm fine playing a waiting game here, now that I have Wannick, letting Decker kill that FHG, and then taking his place with the Phalanx whenever he dies. Next round, I go all Phalanx, and he has only Decker left. He wins initiative, and Decker uses the special attack to get out from behind the pillar, and puts 1 wound on the Phalanx. Phalanx then comes after Decker, popping off all 3 Legionnaires to get height on Decker. Looking back though, I'm pretty sure I 100% torched this spot by not leaving 1 Legionnaire on the Phalanx. Seems like a massive punt by me. If I fail these attacks and Decker just happens to kill Phalanx, I lose my Order Marker 3 for absolutely no reason, and I'm just giving my opponent a lifeline here. These types of mistakes don't get as much attention because they don't end up actually hurting you very often, but they actually probably sway win rates more than many mistakes that do get more attention, as I'm just taking a spot that should be a near 100% win rate for me and just giving my opponent a chance to come back for no reason at all. But this time I avoid the tiny tail end of that distribution that I just created via this mistake and kill Decker on this turn, ending the game. Well, this is probably my worst matchup, to be honest. I'm facing the best Ice and Ink build here, Lich, Scav, and the Wraith Riders. I don't think it's a bad matchup per se, in the sense of I don't think I'm an underdog, but I do think it's basically just a coin flip that mostly comes down to how hot Scav rolls, whereas I think my army is favored into everything else. But Wraith Riders are just so good into Exiles that it's tough to get good value out of that one piece of my army here. Given that the result of this game didn't matter, I decided to test out something here and I sat an Exile. I thought that that was probably the inferior choice at the time, but I wanted to experiment with it and try it out, because even if I was giving up like a 5% edge in this game just to try it, it didn't matter compared to practicing for tomorrow. By the way, the camera here ends up tilting back and forth a lot during this matchup. I'm not sure why that happened, and apologies if that ends up being distracting or annoying during the game. I open pure Maledrix here, which I think is the only way to play this matchup. Basically, embracing the variance of Mal versus Scav and hope that you win it. I do win initiative, though, which is unfortunate, and I develop Mal plus the Festering Honor Guard. My opponent then splits Iron Lich and Scav in different directions. I counted out a ton of different things here, and end up developing Maledrix and the Festering Honor Guard towards Iron Lich. My goal here is to try and put 3 to 4 wounds on Lich on my Order Marker 3 if possible, to have a chance to kill him early in round 2, and either burn Order Markers or make my opponent's Order Markers in round 2 hellish. Iron Lich then takes height and puts 1 wound on Maledrix while the Wraith Riders develop, including to Wannick on the far side. I'm in a pretty gross spot here now, knowing that I might get initiative switched here if I come in and attack Iron Lich like I want to. I end up deciding to take near max height with Maledrix instead, and protect Festering Honor Guards on the far side of her, basically hoping not to take too many wounds on Order Marker 3, and then have a good chance if I win the round 2 initiative, while not being totally screwed if I lose it. While the 5th Festering Honor Guard here takes height on 1 Wraith Rider and attacks it. I was hoping to get the 1 Wraith Rider here to limit their effectiveness later, but I don't do any damage, unfortunately. Lich then pivots again, but misses the attack on the FHG. Scav ends up closing the gap and shoots Maledrix twice, but misses both, and then takes his X turn and retreats back and kills the far Festering Honor Guard. While I didn't do any damage this round, considering that I won the opening initiative and only lost 1 FHG plus 2 wounds on Maledrix while not being super vulnerable to the initiative switch, honestly feels like I've come out ahead relative to average in this situation. The Wannick wound now goes onto the Bug Ball. Going into round 2, there's really nothing I can do but just continue full sending Maledrix and hope it goes well. I win initiative, but it turns out Maledrix can't fit where I was hoping she could, so I'm unable to engage Lich. I got a judge ruling on whether Mal could fit on Lava Height here. I was doing a lot of that today, just testing it all for tomorrow, as the standard felt pretty inconsistent, and I was honestly never sure how they'd rule at this point. And this time I get ruled against, so Maledrix cannot go there. Unable to fit anywhere good, Mal moves slightly closer to where she can go around the lava rock in either direction on the next turn, increasing her threat range a bit, but she probably should have just been here already. If she had been, I could have gotten a lot more value out of this order marker. I end up wounding 1 Wraith Rider with FHGs. Lich stays and misses his attack, and then Scav comes in and kills one FHG, which is perfect for me, as it opens Maledrix to get height on Scav the following turn. The FHG do 3 wounds to Scav and finish off the wounded Wraith Rider, and then Maledrix puts another wound on Scav, who manages an absolutely clutch block off my 4 for 5, and I miss the Infest roll, unfortunately. Lich kills an FHG, and then Scav uses an injection marker and does 2 wounds to Maledrix. He uses the X on Scav, but doesn't actually use another injection marker, which seems like a pretty clear mistake to me. But my Maledrix dies exactly with a 3 out of 5 into a 1 out of 6 to do the final 2 wounds. So what I think is a mistake ends up not mattering at all. I have 2 FHGs left who take height on Scav and get him down to 1 life, but I can't quite finish him off. My FHG managed to survive the following turn from Lich and Scav, but then both die to lava anyways. Oh well. Pretty much each part of this exchange just went like slightly against me, which really serves to emphasize just how close I think this matchup is in theory. And Bugball takes another Wannick wound to end the round. Going into round 3 now, and looking at the board state, I'm pretty confident that sitting in Exile was a mistake, because I think there's a substantial difference in win rate here for me between having 3 versus 4 Exiles on the board versus Lich, the 1 life Scavarith, and the 2 Wraith Riders. So I'm glad I tested it out, because I discovered the game state where it makes a big difference, and I can avoid making this mistake in day 2 and day 3. I end up going 1, 2, 3 on Bugball with the X on Exiles. I think that my thought process at the time was that I wanted to trade Bugball for at least 1 more Wraith Rider before that exchange with Exiles happened. But there's a good argument for having the 3 on Exiles anyways, and just hoping that I was able to make that trade before my order marker 3 rolls around. I win initiative, which is unfortunate, and move up Bugball, but can't attack anything. Lich removes 1 Legionnaire from the Phalanx, and then Scav takes his double turn, burning 1 more Legionnaire. I pop both remaining Legionnaires off the Phalanx, and Phalanx kills Scavarith. The Legionnaires manage to wound the Wraith Rider not on Wannick, but don't wound the one on Wannick. Lich and the Wraith Riders then both miss their attacks, thankfully, and I avoid getting punished for having my order marker 3 on the Phalanx. Phalanx then takes that order marker and moves up to Lava and misses the attack on Lich, and this time I wound the Wraith Rider on Wannick. Lich kills the Phalanx, and I choose a Legionnaire as the Wannick wound for this round. Going into round 4, and I once again very much wish I had that 4th Exile on the board somewhere. But I have to just put all the order markers on Exiles anyways and hope at this point, so I do that. I win initiative and roll up my Exiles and use my first powder to attack the Wraith Riders, but I miss all of the attacks. Lich shoots back, but I hit the stealthy roll. The Wraith Rider attacks the Legionnaire that he's engaged with but misses. And I think 1 Wraith Rider was unengaged here and chose not to move to get an Exile. Probably the one on Wannick, although it's a little hard to see in the game state. If that's the case, that feels like a mistake given how good it is for the Wraith Riders to come and take out one of my Exiles, but a little hard to be sure given that the bushes are hiding some things. Exiles come in and take some melee attacks now and kill the Wraith Rider not on Wannick, but miss the one on Wannick. Lich and the Wraith Rider both kill an Exile here. I move the last Exile to height and do manage to kill the guy on Wannick finally. Lich stays where he is and kills the last Legionnaire, which leaves 1 Exile versus a multi-life Lich. Not a great spot, admittedly. I win initiative and use the powder, shooting up but miss. Lich then moves closer and also misses his attack. My Exile takes height and also misses his attack. Lich manages to break the streak and do the final wound and finishes off that Exile, and we lose this one. GG's. Fun day, and a successful one. I was quite happy with my army overall. Today's games reinforced my thinking that it's the best army to win the overall event with, so planning on rolling with it going into day 2. I learned a lot about how to play it better into a bunch of the meta-relevant armies that I'm likely to see again on day 2 and day 3, and had an overall successful day doing it with a 4-1 finish. Excited, and looking forward to day 2. Peace, y'all.